There is a car being whispered about in the private lounges of Beverly Hills, in the penthouse garages of Manhattan, and in the quiet conversations of executives who could write a check for any vehicle on the planet. And they are not talking about a Rolls Royce. They are not talking about a Bentley. They are talking about a Toyota. And if that surprises you, then you are exactly where this story needs to begin. Welcome back to Auto Elite World, the channel where we go deeper than the spec sheets, beyond the press releases, and straight into what actually matters in the world of elite automotive excellence. I am your host, and today we are pulling back the curtain on one of the most quietly powerful luxury vehicles ever conceived, the 2027 Toyota Century. This is not a car for everyone. In fact, it was never meant to be. But the way America's most discerning buyers are suddenly shifting their gaze toward this machine tells us something profound about where ultra luxury is heading and what the old guard of European prestige might be missing. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly why this car deserves every conversation it is generating. Now, before we go further, let me set the stage for you. The Toyota Century is not a new name. In Japan, this vehicle has existed since 1967, and for decades it has been the official transport of emperors, prime ministers, and the most powerful corporate figures in the country. It is so prestigious in Japan that there is an unwritten rule. Ordinary civilians simply do not ride in one. When Toyota began evolving the Century into its modern generation, and now as the 2027 model takes shape, the question shifted from whether Japan's elite would accept it to whether America's wealthiest class would finally wake up to what they have been missing. Based on everything emerging around this vehicle, the answer appears to be yes, and the reasons are more compelling than you might expect. Let us talk about what makes the 2027 Toyota Century visually unlike anything else in the ultra-luxury space. In a segment dominated by chrome waterfalls, aggressive grills, and design language that practically screams for attention, the Century does something almost rebellious. It whispers. The exterior is expected to carry forward and refine the philosophy of restrained elegance that defined the latest generation, with clean, almost architectural lines that prioritize proportion over decoration. The silhouette is anticipated to be a long, formal presence, the kind of shape that commands a parking lot not because it is flashy, but because it is so composed and so intentional that your eye simply cannot ignore it. The roofline is expected to maintain that signature coach-built curvature that gives the Century its almost handcrafted appearance, a design detail that requires far more engineering investment than a simple flat or sloped roof. The wheel arches are likely to be precisely defined, housing large diameter wheels finished in a treatment that adds weight and gravity to the stance without ever crossing into ostentation. Paint options are anticipated to lean toward deep, complex tones, colors that shift and breathe under different lighting conditions, the kind of finishes that only reveal their true depth when you are standing inches away from them. There is no aggressive front fascia fighting for dominance. There are no oversized vents suggesting performance theater. What you get instead is a vehicle that carries itself with the confidence of something that does not need to prove anything to anyone. And in a world where ultra-luxury design has increasingly become about being seen, the Century's approach of controlled, authoritative restraint is not just different, it is genuinely sophisticated. Now step inside, and this is where the 2027 Century is expected to truly separate itself from the conversation. The interior philosophy of this vehicle is anticipated to be built around a concept that the Japanese call omotenashi, a form of hospitality so complete and so considered that the guest never has to ask for anything, because everything has already been thought of. In automotive terms, that translates into a rear cabin experience that could very likely rival the finest suites in the world's most legendary hotels. The rear seating is expected to be the centerpiece of the entire vehicle. We are talking about configurations that likely include deeply contoured individual seats with extensive power adjustment, heating, ventilation, and massage systems that work across multiple zones of the body simultaneously. The footrest system in the rear is anticipated to extend fully, allowing passengers to recline into a near flat position, the kind of rest position that makes transcontinental drives or long city commutes feel like private air travel at ground level. Material selection inside the Century is expected to be extraordinary. Premium wools and silks for upholstery are a real possibility, continuing the Century's tradition of using fabrics that would feel at home in couture fashion. Wood treatments are likely to involve authentic materials, carefully selected and finished by artisans who spend days on individual panels. The headliner, the door cards, the pillars, every surface is expected to be wrapped, fitted, and refined to a standard that removes any sense of mass production from the equation. What is particularly compelling about the Century interior is that the luxury is not loud. There are no massive screens fighting for attention in the rear cabin. There is no visual noise. The expected design language inside is one of calm command, a space that tells you immediately that you have arrived at the very top of what is possible in a car without ever feeling the need to shout about it. Now, the technology story of the 2027 Century is one of the most interesting chapters in this entire vehicle's narrative, because Toyota is expected to approach technology in the rear cabin in a way that is fundamentally different from how European competitors deploy it. Rather than centering the experience around screens and connectivity as primary features, the Century's technology is anticipated to serve the passenger almost invisibly, integrated into systems that operate in the background and enhance comfort without demanding interaction. The climate control systems are expected to be multi-zone with an extremely high degree of precision, capable of maintaining distinct microenvironments for the driver and each rear passenger simultaneously. Acoustic engineering is anticipated to be one of the most significant technological investments in this vehicle, with active noise cancellation layers working alongside physical sound, deadening to create a cabin environment so quiet that conversations can be held at barely above a whisper at highway speeds. For the rear passengers specifically, entertainment and connectivity options are expected to include private screens, premium audio experiences, and communication systems that keep the passenger productive or relaxed depending on their preference. Integration with personal devices is likely to be seamless, with wireless options reducing the physical clutter that undermines the serenity of a premium rear cabin environment. The driver's interface is expected to be equally refined, with a digital cockpit that delivers all necessary information in a clear, premium format without overwhelming the driver with complexity. Toyota's latest software architecture is anticipated to underpin the system, bringing over-the-air update capability that keeps the vehicle current well into its ownership lifecycle, an increasingly important consideration for buyers who expect their investments to evolve over time. Let us talk about what is under the hood, because the 2027 Century's powertrain story is likely to be one of the more fascinating technical conversations in the ultra-luxury segment. Toyota is widely expected to continue developing the Century's hybrid powertrain architecture, a system that in its current form combines a large displacement V8 engine with the electric motor assistance to produce a power output that prioritizes seamless, immediate response over peak performance theater. The anticipated hybrid system is expected to deliver a combined output in the range of substantial figures, enough to move this large formal limousine with complete authority in any driving situation. But here is what makes a Century's powertrain philosophy interesting. The goal is not 0 to 60 bragging rights. The goal is what the Japanese call namaraka, a smoothness of motion so complete that passengers barely register acceleration or deceleration. The powertrain is engineered to make momentum feel effortless, linear, and inevitable rather than aggressive or showy. The electric motor integration in the system is expected to handle low-speed city driving with particular grace, allowing the Century to glide through urban environments on electric power alone during short segments. reducing both noise and vibration to levels that reinforce the serene cabin experience. The transition between electric and combustion power is anticipated to be virtually imperceptible, another engineering achievement that sounds simple when described, but demands enormous refinement to execute at this level. Fuel efficiency in a vehicle of this size and philosophy is not typically a primary selling point, but the hybrid architecture is expected to deliver respectable numbers relative to the class, which matters to a growing segment of luxury buyers who want their environmental footprint to reflect their values even when traveling in extraordinary comfort. Describing the driving experience of a vehicle like the 2027 Century requires a shift in framework, because this is not a car you evaluate the way you would evaluate a sports sedan or even a performance SUV. The Century is anticipated to be driven the way you assess a private aircraft, not by its agility or its responsiveness to aggressive inputs, but by its ability to eliminate the chaos of the outside world and replace it with absolute serenity for everyone inside. The suspension system is expected to build on Toyota's air suspension technology with additional refinement, reading road surfaces in advance and adjusting damping characteristics before imperfections are felt inside the cabin. The result is anticipated to be a ride quality that feels less like a car moving across asphalt and more like a controlled floating sensation, the kind of smoothness that makes long distances disappear and transforms the act of travel into something genuinely pleasurable rather than merely necessary. Body roll is expected to be managed with quiet authority, keeping the vehicle composed through direction changes without transmitting harshness to passengers. The steering is anticipated to be set up for confidence and directional stability rather than feedback or sport, calibrated for the professional driver who needs precision and predictability over thousands of miles. Noise levels inside the cabin at speed are expected to be among the lowest measured in any production vehicle in the world, a benchmark that Toyota is reportedly treating as a primary engineering objective for this generation. Safety technology in the 2027 Century is expected to be comprehensive and deeply integrated, reflecting Toyota's position as one of the global leaders in active safety research. The suite of driver assistance systems anticipated for this vehicle is likely to include the most advanced version of Toyota Safety Sense available, with pre-collision detection capable of identifying vehicles, pedestrians, cyclists, and other obstacles across a wide range of speeds and lighting conditions. Lane departure warning and lane centering assistance are expected to operate with a refinement appropriate to the vehicle's overall character, providing support without intrusive interventions that would disturb the composure of the driving experience. Adaptive cruise control is anticipated to maintain following distances with a smoothness that feels naturally human rather than mechanical. A particularly important calibration in a vehicle where passenger comfort is the primary priority. Blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, and surround view camera systems are all expected as standard features, giving both the driver and any security or chauffeur professional complete situational awareness in even the most complex urban environments. The expected integration of these systems into a cohesive, seamlessly operating safety architecture reflects Toyota's understanding that at this level of luxury, safety technology must work invisibly in the background, rather than announcing its presence at every opportunity. Now, let us address the question that every serious buyer and enthusiast wants answered. What is this going to cost, and where does it sit in the market? The 2027 Toyota Century is anticipated to carry a starting price in the United States that could position it well above the six-figure threshold, with some estimates suggesting a range that places it in direct conversation with the entry point of Rolls Royce and Bentley territory. Exact figures have not been confirmed, but the expected pricing reflects both the extraordinary craftsmanship involved in producing this vehicle and the deliberate exclusivity strategy that Toyota applies to the Century nameplate. Production numbers are expected to remain intentionally limited, which itself becomes a value proposition for buyers who prioritize rarity alongside quality. In a world where ultra-luxury brands are expanding their model lineups and pushing volumes higher to meet demand, the Century's anticipated production restraint positions it as something genuinely rare in the American market. That scarcity, combined with the vehicle's heritage and the engineering investment behind it, could very likely support strong residual values over time, a consideration that matters to buyers who view their automotive choices through the lens of both experience and investment. The American luxury market for vehicles in this class is a relatively small but extraordinarily influential segment. Buyers here are typically well-traveled, internationally experienced, and keenly aware of what is available globally. They are not easily impressed, and they do not respond to marketing that tells them something is special without delivering the evidence. Now let us put the 2027 Century into context against its most obvious competitors, because this comparison tells a story that goes well beyond specifications. Against the Rolls Royce Ghost, the Century offers a different kind of prestige, one rooted in discretion and cultural depth rather than the overtly dramatic luxury that Rolls Royce has historically embodied. The Ghost is an extraordinary automobile, but it announces itself. The Century declines to. For buyers who have already moved past the desire to be seen and are now seeking the experience of true quality for its own sake, that distinction matters enormously. Against the Bentley Flying Spur, the Century presents a contrasting philosophy on what luxury and motion should feel like. The Flying Spur is a vehicle that integrates performance with opulence, offering genuine driving dynamics alongside its passenger comfort. The Century is not competing on that axis. It is pursuing something different, a purity of purpose that says the only job of this vehicle is to make occupants feel as though the world's friction simply does not apply to them. Against the Mercedes-Maybach S-Class, perhaps its closest conceptual competitor in terms of rear passenger focus, the Century offers a cultural counterpoint to German engineering precision. Where the Maybach delivers luxury through technology, materials, and German thoroughness, the Century delivers it through philosophy, restraint, and a level of considered intention that reflects decades of Japanese craftsmanship tradition. They are different answers to the same question, and increasingly, American buyers are open to exploring what the Japanese answer actually feels like. What ultimately makes the 2027 Toyota Century special is something that cannot be quantified on a specification sheet and cannot be photographed for a brochure. It is the sense of intentionality that permeates every element of the vehicle, the understanding that every decision made during its development was guided by a single objective: to create the finest possible experience for the people traveling inside it. This is a vehicle that does not chase trends. It does not compete by adding more features than its rivals, or by chasing power figures, or by commissioning designers to create the most dramatic visual statement possible. The Century competes by being more thoughtful, more refined, and more deeply considered than anything else at its level. It represents a tradition of Japanese excellence that has taken nearly 60 years to evolve to this point, and the 2027 iteration is expected to be the most complete expression of that tradition, yet delivered to the global market. For American buyers who have spent their careers in boardrooms and executive suites, where the quality of thinking matters more than the volume of presentation, this vehicle speaks a language they recognize immediately. It is the automotive equivalent of the best advice you ever received: quiet, confident, and completely correct. So where does all of this leave us? The 2027 Toyota Century is shaping up to be one of the most significant ultra-luxury vehicles of this decade, not because it is trying to be the loudest voice in the room, but because it might very well be the wisest one. It is anticipated to offer a rear passenger experience that challenges the European establishment on their own terms, while bringing a depth of cultural philosophy and craftsmanship tradition that no amount of engineering alone can replicate. The expected powertrain refinement, the anticipated interior artistry, the projected cabin serenity, and the deliberate rarity of this vehicle combine to create a proposition that America's most discerning buyers are increasingly taking seriously. If you are the kind of person who has already owned everything the traditional luxury establishment has offered and found yourself wondering whether there is something more considered, more intentional, and more genuinely special available somewhere in the world, the answer may be arriving from Japan in the form of a vehicle that has been quietly perfecting itself for 6 decades. The 2027 Toyota Century is not for everyone, but for the right buyer, it might be the most compelling automotive purchase of the decade. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the latest automotive innovations, make sure to subscribe to Auto Elite World, turn on notifications, and let us know in the comments what you think about this vehicle. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.